great and enlightening. If you're doing a lightning talk, I hope you have your slides, if you have content or whatever your content might be, on this computer. We'll have you, I guess you can line up on this side, stage left, and we'll just go through 5 minutes apiece, and hopefully we'll get through them. We've got 10, so they should be great. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started.
Not a good. Okay. Okay, welcome. This lightning talk is about the ISLE portion of the Islandora for All project. My name is David Kaiser Clark. I'm from Williams College. I'm the project manager of the Mellon grant for the Islandora for All. First, very briefly, Islandora is an open source digital repository. There's more than 260 institutions using it. It's built on a Drupal front end, a Fedora back end. It has more than 80 other PHP open source libraries. But really, I want to talk about ISLE. ISLE is a project that lowers the barriers of entry to Islandora while adding enterprise functionality. ISLE uses replaceable Docker images to create a vastly simpler way to install and maintain the Islandora stack. The entire stack installs in under an hour. Before it would take a week or 2 weeks. ISLE enables centralized development and distribution to reduce costs and dependency on expert technical staff and outside vendors. ISLE follows Docker best practices to be able to persist and separate an institution's data and customizations from the ephemeral Docker images. These are the Docker images that you can pull down and then pull down new images which have updates. ISLE creates the first structured installation method for Islandora and will help the ISLE community migrate more easily towards Islandora 8, which is forthcoming. ISLE is flexible and installs on physical or virtual institutional servers, cloud-hosted servers such as AWS, Google Cloud Platform, DigitalOcean, etc., and also on laptops for development work or testing. ISLE supports new installations, it supports migrations, it supports multi-tenancy so that you can have a staging, development, production platform all on either the same server or multiple servers. And most of all, ISLE maintainers are releasing quality-controlled monthly security updates, regular code releases, and as needed, zero-day patches, typically Drupal patches. We keep the ISLE Islandora documentation up to date, and we offer help to the community. ISLE is designed to give us all peace of mind. ISLE initially was built with crowdsourced funding from 17 different academic institutions. We raised $90,000, including in-kind labor donations from Born Digital, who we contracted with to build version 1. ISLE is open source, it's production ready. Beginning next month, we will be beginning our monthly security update releases. We have a workflow and a new lead maintainer coming on. We're very excited about that. The end of this year, Q4, we'll be contributing back the ISLE and also the IR functionality we've been building as well under this Mellon grant to the core Islandora release so that it can then be maintained and stewarded by the Islandora Foundation. Let's see. We're Williams College in partnership with the Islandora Collaboration Group and also in consultation with the Islandora Foundation is very grateful to have received a grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation to support the Islandora for All project. Super quickly, what this grant allows us to do is build in support for super big collections so that with Islandora, which ISLE installs Islandora, but we also are able to bolt on with ISLE the ability to support more than 1 million objects using something called BlazeGraph. We're able to add in functionality to speed up web traffic with a caching accelerator, to do dashboard visualization of log files. We're also working on IR functionality such as readership reports and author profiles, map widgets, Google Scholar integration and optimization, and a self-deposit workflow. The ISLE support, the way to find ISLE is to Google ISLE and Islandora. It'll bring you to the ISLE GitHub site. We have documentation which we work really hard to keep up to date and to make it very user-friendly. That's been really important to us. ISLE has been successful because of the community engagement and the collaboration of many institutions who have come together to help continue to work on this. We're a really friendly group. We welcome people to hang out at our to come out either in our Google group, Islandora-ISLE, link up there, or to contact me or any of a number of other people, including Derek Merlot and Carolyn Moritz, who are both here and both members of ISLE Steering Committee and core work. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi everybody, my name is Sean Airy. I'm a developer at Duke University Libraries. I'm going to talk about two applications that we completely redid over the course of the past year. I specifically want to look at the user interfaces that we developed through the lens of Marie Kondo's popular KonMari method for tidying up your home. All right, so let's start with the catalog. Earlier today, Emily Lineman from NC State gave you a really good background on our collaborative catalog migration project. So as of 4 weeks ago or so, we've effectively disposed of a decade-old vended platform for our catalog. And with it, a lot of its fusty old features and UI conventions in its place. We now have Blacklight, Platinum sponsor. So developing Blacklight UI, what we really wanted to do is focus on adding and emphasizing to the interface elements that really would be of most value to a user in a given state in the application. It was really our hope that by decluttering and reorganizing the information that we'd be creating opportunities to, dare we say, spark joy for our users as they use the catalog. So with that, here's our new homepage. It's very clean and decluttered. We have new noteworthy additions. We have specifically have new books from Duke faculty authors. On our item pages, we're now giving the primary call to action and the key information a lot more emphasis, a lot more room to breathe. And then for all of the information, the rest of the information on the item page that we had to retain, we've now designed it with a lot more intention, right? So long text, we're now truncating. We're still giving you sort of a glimpse. You're getting the gist of it at a glance, but all of the content is now arranged into crisp columns with precise arrangement and alignment. So essentially, our item pages are a Marie Kondo t-shirt drawer. One thing we also did before we started theming the site, the first thing we did was build out a living style guide within the application that really helped us to keep our color palette in order, our Sass variables, and because joy sparkage should really be for everyone, we used some JavaScript to develop some live color contrast accessibility checking and reporting directly in line in our style guide. So let's shift gears. I want to talk about one more project that we've done at Duke in the last year, our open access repository. We've really revitalized DSpace at Duke in the past year. We've jumped from version 1.7 all the way up to 6.2. Our new DSpace UI, you see a lot of the same kind of decluttering techniques as I showed with the catalog. We do admittedly still have quite a bit left to do. But one thing I wanted to do, I wanted to show one particular feature that we added that we felt was pretty innovative. We didn't see any other examples of other libraries that have done this. But what we really wanted to do is try to just add a touch of joy to a place that's traditionally joyless, DSpace. And so here it is, right on our item pages in DSpace now, we're pulling in an author profile, complete with a photograph, a preferred version of the author's name, and in their own words, a brief description of their research interests. The source of this data is the excellent open source platform Vivo. Scholars at Duke have been using Vivo for a while now to be a centralized hub to store their research information. Departmental websites have begun pulling in this information dynamically through Vivo's APIs. We really liked how this worked, and we thought maybe we could try to do this in the library, and I feel like we kind of pulled it off. So profiles, it's a nice, unique value add for the library for the open access copy of an article. It's something that really isn't going to be possible or practical to do in the paywalled published version on the journal website. And it's also a nice way to add a little bit of warmth and humanity to an interface that's typically cold and uninviting. Yes. So you should thank your crufty old interfaces for their time and their service to you and your users, and then try to figure out how to get rid of them. Sparking joy for our users in the libraries is an attainable goal. It's one worth pursuing. It's well within our reach, so let's go make it happen. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Nikitas Tampakis. I'm a discovery infrastructure developer at Princeton University Library, and I'm here to talk to you today about a catalog page redesign work that we did at the Princeton University Library, and walking through that process from start to finish. But before I get into that, I wanted to give a shout out to people who are my colleagues that are here with me today, or at the Code4Lib conference. Christina Cortaria and Kim Lehman are Code4Lib newcomers, so please make them feel welcome here. As well as Sean Ellis and Francis Kayua, who have been longtime members of this committee. So just a little overview about the catalog we have at Princeton. It's a Blacklight-powered catalog, which replaced our old Voyager OPAC in January 2018. It was met with little resistance after almost 3.5 years of various forms of outreach and engagement with staff, faculty, and students. However, we surfaced the need to improve through particularly 2 usability tests that we conducted in 2016 and in 2017, particularly with the way that holdings and access information is displayed. In these tests, we had done 30-minute interviews with 10 to 12 students and faculty, and we constantly collect feedback through the catalog feedback form, but it's not indicative of user experience. It's mostly complaints from library staff or people who Google themselves and want their metadata changed. So the goals of our redesign were to make it easier for users to view item availability info and online access links, to better integrate digital library content, and to enhance our stack map. And this is sort of our timeline of that process. In August of 2018, our developers surveyed other university catalogs and made design diagrams. We made wireframes using Adobe XD, and there's a link there in the slide. We conducted a guerrilla-style usability test of wireframes in the main library lobby, about 5-minute sessions. We brought Candy, and we used Silverback to record the sessions. And we were able to get 26 users, sort of not typical of the feedback we usually get in other forums. We had 7 undergrads, 6 grad students, 10 library staff, a high school student, and an alum. We tweaked and implemented these designs, had a feedback session for library staff, and these changes went live January 30th of this year for the start of the spring semester. And here are a summary of the changes. We put the online access links and physical holding info better integrated in the main display. We removed a right column and made only a 2-column approach. Items that are viewable from our digital repository have thumbnails. The main bibliographic info is at the top part of the page. We put the access info, and then the remaining bibliographic fields appear below it. We have extra information that we pull in from Umlaut. There's a See Also panel, Google Book links, and we moved that to be below the image thumbnail. And our stack map refactor, we've had feedback that students would click on the map, but the map wouldn't tell them what the call number or the title of the book was that they clicked on, so we integrated that. And it's better integrated with our catalog. And I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots of this. So this was our before, and now for that same record, it looks like this. So that info is right here, front and center. If there's an online link, it also appears front and center. And I have other examples of links if you'd like to see them more in detail, but that's only if you're interested. So thank you very much.
One of these things has my slides in it, I think. Dre, always messing with the slides. Hold on a moment while I do Dre stuff. Keep changes. Present review. Drag. Oh, come on. Not this again. Drag. And function F11. Okay. Now we may begin. So, I'm Dre. I'm the Associate Head of User Experience at NC State. And a few months ago, this happened. And it is the freaking awesomest thing ever. So if you haven't tried it, I recommend it. One of the things that I've really been enjoying as a user experience person is watching my child learn how to experience the world as a new user. So I was excited when he taught me something about affordances. As you might be asking what cute pictures of my baby have to do with affordances, and if you're not a user experience person, you might not know what an affordance even is. An affordance is a feature of an object that invites and enables a user to interact with it in the way that it's intended to be used. So one of my kids' favorite toys is this little wooden block puzzle. Even though he's too young to really understand the shapes or the pictures yet, he still uses the toy. And naturally, because it's a puzzle for babies, it has baby-sized affordances. So in this case, there's these big chunky handles on each piece that are easy for him to grab. But he doesn't really know that they're handles. He just experimenting with his hands to discover what they can do. He explores what he can do with his hands, and he discovers that the handle matches his ability to grasp. And so I was observing this one day, and I said to myself, aha! Aha! Affordances are about capability. He's learning to use the world, and the affordances offered by the world have to match his capability. But then I realized that that's not everything that's going on with this puzzle. There's other things. It has other features that are intended to facilitate its use. First, there's the shape of each cutout. The shape of each piece matches the shape of the corresponding cutout. And you know you've matched the piece to the puzzle when it drops into place. And in other words, there's a functional component built into the puzzle shapes. In order for the affordance to do its thing, it has to effectively support the function that it's intended to enable. And second, there's the images on the shapes, which match the images in the cutouts, right? The pieces and the cutouts communicate their correspondence through the images. That is, there's a semantic message that the affordance is providing, which suggests its purpose. So this actually gives us 3 dimensions of affordance. For an affordance to be effective, it has to match the capability of the user. That is, the user has to be able to engage their person with the affordance effectively. It has to enable the desired function in the target object. If the affordance doesn't allow you to effectively use the object, then it's useless as an affordance. And finally, it has to have appropriate semantics. The message conveyed by the affordance has to allow us to effectively recognize and understand its use. So if you're missing any corner of this triangle, you're going to have a breakdown. A functional gap is maybe the most obvious way that an affordance can fail. These are cases where the affordance doesn't effectively enable the intended outcome. Quite simply, if the affordance doesn't facilitate the task it's meant to, or if it's stuck, or if it's broken, or just doesn't plain work as intended, it fails. Oop. Next, let's consider a capability gap. This suggests that the affordance can do what's intended, but the user can't successfully interact with the affordance as it's designed. So you may have seen these in various places, these floor plates that cover the power outlets. And if you look really closely at them, there's this tiny little groove that you can catch with your fingernail, which allows you to open the door. But if your fingernails are brittle or they're short, you might find that you can't easily get the door open. In this case, the affordance doesn't adequately support the user's capability. Finally, a semantic failure of the affordance suggests that the user doesn't recognize it or doesn't recognize the correct way to interact with it. This can take a number of forms. You might not be able to identify the affordance as in this display outside an elevator, which is actually a touchscreen call button. Or the affordance might send a mixed message like this door that tells you to pull it but tempts you to push it by having a push bar. When we're designing affordances, we should consider our design's effectiveness in each of these three dimensions. And if there's a breakdown, this is a useful rubric for diagnosing the problem. Did the affordance fail in terms of function, capability, or semantics? What's interesting to me about this puzzle is that it teaches children all three of these dimensions, capability, function, and semantics, even though the designers never quite thought about it that way in all likelihood. And even if my kid doesn't quite know what to do with it, right? And so that's all I got. Thank you. Oh, I'm going to fix the thing that I unfixed for the next person because I should leave a place better than I found it. Display settings. Duplicate. Keep changes. Did you do it? I can't tell. Yes, okay. Sorry. Oh, come on. Hold on a sec. Display setting is okay, it's cloned. Okay, it theoretically should work. Hey, AV, do you see the desktop right now? All right, thank you.
I think I'm going to have to undo what Dre just did. I'm sure I won't do it as entertainingly, though. Where are display settings? Dre, can you help?
I just right-click on the desktop.
Oh, that's great. Oh, here it is. And where's extend? Oh, now I've lost my mouse.
All right, I'll fix it.
No, I got it.
Okay. Sure?
Think so. All right. That's my...
Sorry. Let me,
I need to open that. Oh, my slides are gone now.
Okay. Here, let me, do you need notes?
Yeah.
Okay. I will show you the magic trick of the cursors on the wrong screen. Okay. This is yours?
Nope.
No. Which is yours?
It went away.
It went away?
Hit plus, I'll find it.
Okay.
Sorry, folks. There it is, right there. Sweet.
Wait, no.
That needs to go there.
Well, I don't think you need to here. I'm going to undo what you undid because...
Yeah, I'm going to need to.
Oh, you want to have it over there?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it have a...
Yep.
But it needs to be over here for you to... Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then speaker notes. And that needs to come back over this way. Oh, this is so awesome. Thanks, Trey. No, it's all right. I'm going to have to put it all back when I'm done. Hi, I'm Hardy Pottinger. I'm a developer at UCLA Library, and this talk is about ServerSpec. Here's the thing I know. We are constantly learning. Have you seen the mailing list? Our jobs change all the time. We are always the newbie. How can tests possibly help, and why ServerSpec? Well, honestly, it's one option. Tests are documentation. Your team may not survive, tools may come and go, but if you write tests in ServerSpec, your test will remain accessible to anyone reading the code. I'll show you. ServerSpec is an extension of RSpec, which is a testing framework for Ruby. Before we go too much further, you'll hear me mention a few different words with spec in them. There will be a diagram later, but it's too much detail right now. This is normal Ruby stuff, software we use. Yes, it's Ruby, and you'll need rake. Sudo helps too, but it's not required. It does have an init command, which will help you get started. So you type in serverspec init, -init, and answer a few questions, pick your OS, select the backend type, blah, 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 and boom, you get a nice set of files, a basic starter kit. Let's look at the sample spec file. You've seen Ruby, you've seen Rails, you've seen a helper. It's a way to pull out some complexity to improve the readability of your code. For ServerSpec, it helps improve the readability of your tests. Let's skip it for now. Instead, let's go look at all the other pieces we get. Each of these are, other sections are what are called resources. In the sample, we have a package resource, we have a service resource, we have a port resource, and we have a file resource. And all the tests are pretty clear about what they expect, right? It should be a file, it should contain something. Of course, there are many other resources. Every time I go to this page, I notice something new that I've never used before or want to try again. Okay, so that's what tests look like. What about running them? Normal RSpec practice puts the test in a spec folder. You run them with the RSpec command. You give it a path to a specific file, and that file will be run, or a folder, and all the tests in the folder will run. Or you can get fancy with the rake file. Here, I'll show you a demo. Let's see if this works. Awesome. Okay, so this is rake, and if you run rake-t, you'll see all the tasks that are running that you could run, and now this is going to run rake spec Ursus dev. Ursus is the front end of our Samvera stack. If you're interested, all these tests are in that URL up there. But it runs all these different commands, makes sure that the ports are listening, that the right version of Ruby is running, that the permissions are right on different folders. And then this test will continue demoing the same tests on other environments, but we'll skip all that. Here's the link to the test that I just ran in that demo. I used a spec helper to add the ability to include shared libraries of test code. Let's take a peek at that. The spec helper file, like I've mentioned, is a way to pull out some complexity to improve the readability of your test code. For ServerSpec, it makes it easier to read. I'll skip the details. There are links in the slides. The other piece of this is a rake file. You know, it's kind of like make. It lets you put together smaller pieces into a whole. Here's the code for that demo and a link to the documentation that inspired it. I promised to diagram all this stuff. Here's one I found. It's all an extension of RSpec. ServerSpec sits on top of another gem called SpecInfra. SpecInfra handles all the specific details to whatever kind of thing you're testing. And this is important if you find a bug. Some gotchas I know about, you'll need the ss command. It's like netstat, but it's not deprecated. It's included in Red Hat, and you'll need to install IP route 2 in Ubuntu. SBIN needs to be in your path. Ubuntu does that, but Red Hat doesn't. You can set the path in the spec helper. And then the big one is that most of these tools are run by a single developer, and he has issues turned off in GitHub. So if you find a bug, you will need to fix it, or at least suggest a fix in a pull request. What about containers or Docker? There are options and lots of fun reading. I recommend Docker Spec. It's a gem. Here, I'll show you a demo that, actually, I'm going to skip past that demo. I only have about 10 seconds. But you can see it's just like ServerSpec, only for Docker. It's a lot faster than running against a VM. It's cool and fun. And I have a link to the tests on my slides. Thanks. And now I have to fix this thing. All right, duplicate.
That should be fine.
And then what's next?
Just close the, what's it?
Okay.
And then, oh, function. Hand's too small. Okay. All right. I think nothing will break now. I just cursed everything to break.
Hello, and I don't have slides anyway, so I'm just going to talk at you. My name is Ethan Gates, software preservation analyst at Yale University Library, and I'm here representing the Scaling Software Preservation and Emulation Infrastructure Program, or EASY, E-A-A-S-I for short. For those not familiar, we're a Mellon and Sloan Foundation funded affiliate project of the Software Preservation Network, and we're working to expand emulation as a strategy for access and interaction with legacy digital collections. We have a comprehensive program of work that includes improvements to the emulation as a service platform that was originally developed by the BWFLA program at the University of Freiburg, enhanced metadata schema for describing software collections and computing environments, and a decentralized network of research institutions sharing their legacy software. Starting next month, our node partners at Carnegie Mellon, Stanford, Notre Dame, UC San Diego, and the University of Virginia will start installing our platform and testing the resources we've been preparing for them at Yale. And so you have an idea of what I mean by resources. This is basically emulated versions, virtual machines that might have, say, Windows 98 plus Office 97 installed with them, Windows XP plus Stata 10.0, Mac OS 8 plus Adobe Reader 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, whatever you need. The possibilities for creating derivatives, different combinations of operating systems and software are basically whatever you can imagine. We're hoping to start off with about 50 such provided environments in the network and be at 3,000 by the end of the grant period. These software titles, environments, we mean them as tools to help users of libraries and special collections and archives at these institutions to access and interact with digital files in the context they were originally created. I'm highlighting this project for you all today for two reasons. One, we're really going to start generating a lot of interesting documentation and I hope debate when this release actually kicks off next month. So please join in and find out more about us by following along either via the Software Preservation Network website, softwarepreservationnetwork.org, or their Twitter account, and follow the hashtag EASY. That's hashtag EAASI. But second and more pressingly, I need your help and feedback now. As the software preservation analyst, I'm going to continue populating the EASY network with software from Yale's collections over the next year and a half. And while I've got ideas about where our priorities should be, I want to hear from the community. What legacy software would help you unlock your digital collections? Where are the hidden dependencies? Where can we focus our work to have the biggest impact? What would the most useful software be for our toolkit in unlocking legacy digital objects? So Jessica Meyerson from Educopia Institute and I have put together a public feedback form about software prioritization. It'll take 10 minutes of your time at the most to answer just a few questions about the kind of software that either you have used over time, that your patrons or your donors have used, what you see in your collections, where you think we should focus and why, if you want to tell us. We're going to keep the form up for a few weeks. Again, check the Software Preservation Network Twitter, hashtag EASY, hashtag EAASI to find it. If you've got just a few minutes tonight over dinner, do it as a fun group activity. While you're traveling home, in the airport, whenever, I'd love to hear from you, and we'll happily share our results back with the Code4Lib community next month. Thank you.
There's no longer a folder. Oh, yeah, there is. I see. But I just want to adjust things. That seems to be what everybody does. So another Mellon-funded project. How about that? The motivation for what I'm just going to talk to you about for a few minutes is that in my view, selection and appraisal, so sort of determining what gets collected, what gets preserved, what has long-term retention value, is an area that's certainly very fundamental to archives, to special collections, to a lot of different institutions, but has been relatively under-addressed when it comes to the sort of software development that we've done, the kind of research and activities that can actually support it. The patterns that we look for are things that can potentially be, at least in part, software detectable in a way that could be useful. And we frequently want to take actions that reflect these sort of contextual relationships that also can be unearthed by pulling information out. We've got, by some estimations, about 48 years of email creation. Hundreds of billions of messages generated every day. I could try to give you a definitive count, but it doesn't really matter. A lot. Most has little long-term retention value, but some absolutely does. We know we've moved to all kinds of different media of communication, but email is still quite foundational in terms of things that we can analyze and discover, and also accountability of public officials, right? Things that people are doing through email all the time. So just a little bit of the background to the project that I'm going to summarize for you very quickly is we had the project called BitCurator, which was a partnership between the Maryland Institute for Technology and the Humanities and UNC Sills, where I am. We developed in an environment called the BitCurator environment that's a specialized Ubuntu Linux operating system that has just been customized in various ways and has a lot of special tools in it that allows you to do things like create disk images, extract certain information from it. It's gotten a lot of wide use. We've had a lot of interest in joining the BitCurator consortium. We now have, I think, about 35 institutional members from 4 different countries. But the output is generally quite static. You run these reports, there's output, it gets dumped to a directory somewhere. Users have expressed an interest in additional ways to make more kind of iterative judgments about things and have the process be a little bit more dynamic. So here's what the BitCurator environment looks like. After that project, we engaged in, also funded by the Mellon Foundation, BitCurator Access and BitCurator NLP. So we've developed this BitCurator Access web tools that allows you to navigate through the contents of a disk image dynamically through a web browser. There's also a tool chain that basically will extract text from files, present it on the screen, in the browser, do named entity recognition and show you what the entities are. Then you could potentially search on them or make decisions around them. And then also topic modeling, right? And I'd be happy to talk to people about this later. There was also then in parallel a project called Tomes at the State Archives in North Carolina, looking at email and specifically within a state government context, and even more particularly when they're trying to use the capstone model that the National Archives has put forward. And so they've created a number of projects. So we basically came together to the Mellon Foundation. RATOM is a bit of a backronym. We wanted to give some shout out to Ray Tomlinson, which is why it's called RATOM, which was Review, Appraisal, and Triage of Mail. Also funded by the Mellon Foundation. And basically the idea is to take some of these tools and lessons that we've developed from application to just any old data that gets pulled off of disks, to apply natural language processing and also machine learning to make a bit of progress on dealing with collections that have email in them. How can we do this kind of iterative process of making judgments, trying to unearth patterns that'll help you determine what should be retained, what constitutes a record, what type of record it is. We are not going to, in 2 years, solve email. And we are not in 2 years going to solve appraisal, but we think that there's room for some exciting incremental progress on these things. And as with all the other projects, this will be free and open source software that people can experiment with. So the project teams are at UNC Sills. The project just got underway in January, so a lot of what we've been doing is bringing our team together and kind of getting underway. It's myself, Cam Woods, who's the technical lead, Antoine DeTorsi, software developer, Anusha Suresh, who's project manager at our school. And then at the State Archives, Camille Tyndall Watson, Jamie Patrick Burns, and Nitin Arora, who's the software developer there. I will be around for the remainder of the conference. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who has interest in this. And of course, feel free to contact me after the conference as well. Thank you.
making Jeremy do all the hard work. I'm Naomi Duche from Stanford.
And I'm Jeremy Nelson from Stanford.
And I'm just here to, you know, raise ruckus, basically.
So we are both on the Sinopia LD4P, another Mellon grant-funded project. And we're going to talk about some of the technology we're using to develop a sort of a cloud-based linked data environment. And in the process of doing this, we started off with the Library of Congress's BibFrame editor and BibFrame profile, and we thought we'd talk a little bit of piece of that, sort of the challenges and work we've done since, I guess it's been September since we started really working into this project. So linked data is hard. I think linked data is very granular, and most catalogers and most of us understand metadata and to create it and use it in less granular concepts than at a RDF triple. The BibFrame editor from the Library of Congress uses profiles, BibFrame profiles, which is a kind of a JSON-based domain-specific language, or DSL, to really facilitate description BibFrame 2.0 concepts such as works, instances, agents, and items. These profiles are translated into HTML forms by the BibFrame editor for use by catalogers to create and edit metadata in the BibFrame editor. So we have two projects right now. One is an actual fork of the BibFrame linked data editor called Sinopia. And so you can kind of see what this sort of looks like. Right now, very much a work in progress, I should note. But here is an example of we're pulling in one of these profiles for monograph instances, and you can see sort of illustrating some of the functionality we want to support. What is constructed in that HTML4 form really depends on the resource templates and the templates contained in what's called the property templates within that. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so you guys can hear me now, yes? So the templates are also, the Library of Congress designed these things, and they're JSON, but the catalogers are the ones that are going to be describing actual stuff, so they're the ones who have to figure out what they need to describe the stuff. So even though they're in JSON, they probably don't want to work in the raw JSON by and large. But because this is Code4Lib, yay, I'm showing you some of the raw JSON here. We actually have it's already here, yep. So the Library of Congress also, actually I should do it this way, yay, has this so that folks can create the JSON based on what they need in the template, basically. They're like a template for what you're going to say in linked data. So if we went back to the the editor, so this is a faked example, but if this was like an instance of a monograph, it might be related to a work, and if you clicked on one of these buttons, you would get another form for the thing that describes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a flexible system. It's not, the infrastructure we're using isn't tied to BibFrame. It's just these templates that are tied to BibFrame. So once you fill all this stuff in, I'll let Jeremy come up with a little RDF display in
right.
1 minute.
In 1 minute. So actually, I'm going to hit OK, and we'll put here statement of responsibility for today, Code4Lib, and then we have the sort of preview RDF right now. And then our intention is actually to store the RDF in a backend trellis-based linked data platform. So, so the intention is that this would be more of a catalog of record for individuals, as well as being interoperable with other library systems. And it's just linked data. It's not specifically tied to BibFrame, so we don't want to get into that.
Right.
controversy.
So there are two other people that are actively working on this in the room, Jonathan Martin and Mike Giarlo. But you can come up to any of us if anyone wants more information. And we know this looks really bad. It's a work in progress.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stefana Brettweiser, and I'm the digital archivist at the Canadian Centre for Architecture. I also find myself in the conspicuous position of being without slides today, but I'm here to tell you about Scope, which is a born digital archive access interface that we've been developing at the CCA. So about a year and a half ago, my predecessor, Tim Walsh, who you heard from earlier, we started noticing a few things at the CCA. The first one was that we had sort of unmanageable reference workflows when it came to serving our born digital archives. So up until this point, basically what would happen was that our researchers would ask our reference staff, after looking at our finding aids for certain materials, if we had it already disk imaged, we'd grab it from Archivematica. If not, we'd go and disk image it, process it through Archivematica, query Archivematica for a DIP, put that into a shared folder with the researcher, and then definitely the researcher didn't know how to use that stuff, so we'd go up and help them. Unmanageable. We don't want to do that. The second thing we were noticing, too, was that, that this sort of top-down approach given by finding aids for research, starting at a collection name and going downward until you find what you want, wasn't always necessarily applicable for the type of research done in architectural archives. People are really interested in the history of software. So rather than going top-down, they wanted to go across. I'm not maybe interested in the drawings of a particular architect, but I am interested in every 3D model that you have from 1999. So obviously doing this in a traditional finding aid wouldn't work. You'd have to know exactly what was in every single collection. So with those two things in mind, my former colleague, Tim Walsh, developed a prototype last year, and it's now been fully developed by Artifactual. We have a beta version that's up and working. How it works is after a processing archivist finishes processing a collection, they upload the DIPs from that collection to Scope. From there, a researcher can search across on the file level from all collections or browse going top down in a more traditional research method. And so this leverages the really granular data that Archivematica creates in each of the MET files, looking things like last modified dates, file formats, file titles, etc., meaning that we have much more granular searching that's available to us now. We're actually just now working on our second phase of development. What we're hoping to do on top of the granular searching that we already have, making that much more like filtered and faceted so that it's easier to go through if you're maybe a less experienced researcher, as well as sort of integration with our Archivematica DIP storage. This is a little bit to make us more popular with our processing archivists so that they're not having to upload DIPs one by one in a collection that is maybe like 300 gigs. So this is the part that's the pitch. It is free and open source and on GitHub, and we'd love to share it with you or talk with you. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Good afternoon. Hi. How's it going? That's good to hear. I'm really glad to have you all in California. I'm serious. You know me, I'm very earnest, so. Give me 1 sec. All right. So I'm not here to talk to you about spreadsheets today. That's an inside joke because I gave a presentation about spreadsheets at Code4Lib once. What I'm here to talk about more is my experience with Code4Lib and how the community has changed, and give you some things to consider and calls to action. So I've been coming to Code4Lib for a long time. We've seen a lot of growth in this community,
We've seen ourselves adopt a code of conduct, and we've worked to develop a set of very explicit values. I, for one, believe that we need a code of conduct, and it's particularly one that's not just sort of punitive, but one that's supportive and helps us actualize the goals of our community. I think we also want to be mindful of the fact that the code of conduct and sort of the work that we do around that needs to reflect community values in terms of how we manage that and the procedures around that. So based on conversations that I've had with Ann Slaughter and Francis Kaiua, who have stepped in this year as coordinators for what we're now calling the community support volunteers and duty officers, I want to give you a little bit more context about that. So Ann, Francis, and I met with past duty officers, and we spoke with duty officer coordinators, Becky Hughes and Galen Charlton. And one of the key pieces of feedback that we got was around language. In particular, the phrase duty officers raised a lot of concerns about policing, particularly in things about policing behavior. So with this feedback, one of the things that we've chosen to do, because we can, is to change the name of the role to community support volunteers. We're volunteers who stand to support the community and its values. We're not cops. So another issue that Francis, Ann, and I discussed was how to manage and share information over time. So who would have thought that record keeping around community health and safety would be difficult? The three of us believe that there should be an ongoing, what we're calling a community support squad, to have clear responsibility outside the conference week. And one of the things is it's not always clear how to report an issue if somebody says something inappropriate in the Slack channel when we're not at a conference. One of the things that we've been thinking about is that this has a lot of side benefits to do this, even though this will be a lot of work. One is a standing model will distribute labor more fairly. It adds continuity in terms of expectations and communication, and it gives us norms that we can reflect in policies and procedures. So this is just sort of a list of things that we can consider. One, pretty clearly, is to identify an ongoing community group. There should be terms associated with this group. This is hard, exhausting work. So we're thinking 6 months, a year. We don't have this fully fleshed out, but we also need to make sure that we're evaluating, reviewing, and updating the code of conduct, because while we need to have a clear set of norms around this, we also need to make sure that it makes sense and it's understandable. We need to develop clear process for record keeping for exactly the problem that I described. Is it's hard to manage this information over time, and this is privileged information. And we need to have clear procedures for enforcement and accountability in this community for everybody, because we want this to be a welcoming space for everybody who joins us here. And I don't want to say most importantly, but burnout is real. This is a psychologically challenging but important commitment to our community. So we need to find a way to support the people who are also doing this work. So we have to do this to ensure our community remains welcoming, safe, and the best it can be. So who's in? Please talk to me, Francis, or Ann. We are looking to hand this off, but we will work with you because we care about this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lightning Talks. Those were great. Just some announcements as we wrap. Oh, where is this page? No. Well, that's not helpful. In the slew of everybody moving things around, they closed stuff. Perfect. Thank you, Eric. So, yes. Community support volunteers for the evening, which actually it's primarily just one individual. Sean Ellis. Are you in the room, Sean? Can you stand if you are? Stage left. Only contacted by phone, so there's a phone number on the conduct and safety section of the website page. So if you need that, please, that's where you'll find it. And then reception logistics. Reception is at the Tech Museum of Innovation in San Jose, so here, from 6:30 to 8:30. There will be a continual loop of buses shuttling people from the hotel to the museum. The first one's leaving at 6:15, so you'll meet for the shuttle just outside the doors by conference registration. And then buses will also return to the hotel. The last one will leave the reception at 8:40. So if you miss that one, you'll have to find another way to get back. And then if you're giving a talk tomorrow morning, please arrive between 8 and 8:45 to load your presentation onto the podium computer. Otherwise, that wraps up day 1. I hope everybody is feeling exceptionally exhausted by all the information you've consumed, and we will see you tonight.